All right, so picture this. You're in Galveston.
Okay.
It's Mardi Gras.
Right.
The lights are starting to come down.
Yeah.
The energy's still up from the celebration.
Right.
But in the middle of all that, a confrontation is starting to brew.
Mm-hmm.
And it ends tragically with a life lost
Wow.
and another life changed forever.
Jeez.
A 19-year-old teacher's aide caught in the middle of this violent clash ends up facing a life sentence.
Oh, wow.
So tonight, we are going to dive deep into this case using court testimony and public records
Okay.
to try and understand how a night that starts out with celebration can take such a dark turn.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think a really important one.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the thing that jumps out at me right away
Okay.
is you've got this 19-year-old teacher's aide
Right.
dedicated to helping others, right?
Yeah.
Described as kind of slender, 130 pounds.
Right.
And then you have the individuals he clashed with,
Yeah.
individuals with prior criminal records. Some witnesses even went so far as to call them gangsters.
Wow.
And I think that difference in physical presence alone
Yeah.
can be something that juries are swayed by,
Really?
consciously or not.
Yeah.
It plays into, I think, our inherent biases about who we see as threatening.
Yeah. Absolutely. It makes you think about that 19-year-old surrounded by these individuals described as gangsters.
Yeah.
Even more unsettling is when you look deeper into the trial records and you see some of the language used.
Okay.
Witnesses describe the victim as a white boy
Uh-huh.
and the others as Mexicans.
Wow.
It makes you wonder, did racial prejudice play a role in what happened that night?
I think that's a question that deserves very, very careful consideration. You know, we have to be cautious about drawing conclusions
Right.
based solely on the language that was used.
Yeah.
But the fact that those terms were used
Yeah.
absolutely raises concerns about potential bias.
Right.
And bias can impact everything,
Yeah.
from witness testimony to how a jury interprets evidence.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So how does the law grapple with all of this?
Right.
This case really seems to hinge on the idea of self-defense.
Absolutely. And, legally speaking,
Yeah.
self-defense means that you can use force, even deadly force,
Mm-hmm.
if you reasonably believe that you are in imminent danger of death or serious bodily harm,
Okay.
and that force is necessary to protect yourself.
Right.
So the key here is reasonable belief.
Got it.
The jury has to decide
Right.
if the fear that the defendant felt was reasonable,
Okay.
given the circumstances.
Interesting.
So it's not just about whether the defendant felt fear,
All right.
but would a reasonable person in their situation
Yeah.
have felt the same way?
That makes sense, but it also seems incredibly difficult to determine,
It is.
especially in a chaotic, high-stress situation like the one we're discussing.
Exactly. And that's what makes these cases
Yeah.
so challenging.
Right.
I mean, in this instance, the prosecution argued
Yep.
that the teacher's aide had other options besides using deadly force, that he wasn't truly trapped,
Okay.
and that his actions went beyond what was necessary
Right, for self-preservation.
for self-preservation.
Okay.
The defense countered
Yeah.
that he was terrified,
Uh-huh.
that he was facing multiple people
Right.
with prior criminal records,
Okay.
and that his actions were driven by a very real fear for his life.
So in the end, the jury sided with the prosecution, finding him guilty.
They did.
Not only of murder, but also of attempted capital murder.
Yes.
I have to admit, I don't totally understand the distinction.
Yeah, it's a distinction that I think trips a lot of people up.
Okay.
Capital murder in Texas specifically applies to certain types of murder.
Got it.
Like killing a police officer.
Right.
Or a child, or a murder committed during the course of another felony, like a robbery.
Okay.
So attempted capital murder in this case likely means that the jury believed
Yeah.
his actions were intended to cause death, even if he didn't succeed in killing more than one person.
So these charges are incredibly serious,
They are,
leading to 5 life sentences.
yes, 5 life sentences.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around the weight of that.
It is.
It forces you to think, was justice served here?
Yeah,
How do you reconcile the complexities of self-defense,
right.
the potential for prejudice, and the undeniable tragedy of a life lost?
I think this case really leaves us with more questions than answers.
Yeah.
It pushes us, I think, to examine our own understanding of justice,
I
of
like-
responsibility,
Yeah.
to consider how factors like implicit bias
Right.
might influence these really life-altering decisions.
Right.
So I think the big question this raises is, how do we ensure a legal system
Yeah.
that is truly fair,
Right.
that considers all perspectives and
Yeah.
protects the vulnerable?
It's a challenge, for sure, and something I think think we all have a role in considering.
We do.
You know, as a listener, what stands out to you in this case?
Yep.
What factors would you weigh most heavily?
Yeah.
I think this deep dive doesn't offer any easy answers,
No, it doesn't.
but it does force us to confront some really, really difficult questions
It does.
about perception and prejudice
Absolutely.
and the legal system itself.
Yeah, for sure.
So thanks for joining us
Thank you.
for this deep dive. And until next time.
See ya.